Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Church in Fall River, Mass.
Good morning, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Bill Zelazny, Reverend Bill Zelazny, and I am the guest minister for today. And my second time here, enjoyed being here with you all. So, shall we begin the service with the lighting of the chalice? We light this chalice as Unitarian Universalists, whose purpose is to bring more compassion, more care, and more justice into the world for all communities and all people. Shall we join together now with the affirmation that is found in the order of service? Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. As I said before we start singing, I really enjoy hearing the bell ring. The last church that I served also had a bell tower, and they would ring the bell, and I could see the people scurrying in from the parking lot. But you all were here and seated. You're all here, seated in place. Really wonderful. So our opening hymn is number 360 in the hymn book. Here we have gathered.
Here we have gathered side by side, circle of kinship, come and step inside. May all who seek here find a kindly word. May all who seek here feel heaven. Sing now together this our heartfelt song. Here we have gathered, all to celebrate days of our lifetime, matter small and great. We, all ages, women, children, men, infants and sages, sharing what we can. Sing now together this our heartfelt song. Life has its battles, sorrows and regrets, but in the shadows let us not forget. We who now gather know each other's sin.
let's see, announcements. Someone? Okay. Oh, yeah, hi.
My name is Dr. Nice to be here. Thank you so much for joining us today. Lead us in worship. I appreciate that. Also, that everyone know that Sherry Conley is going to be our guest minister next week. She's been here a couple of times. This is her second appearance. And on Saturday, several of us are going to be going to Louis Saha's ordination. She's one of our guest ministers as well. If you haven't signed your card, please do see me after the service inside. We'll talk about who's going to meet where and how we're going to talk with. Thanks. And lunch. Oh, and lunch. We're having lunch. The ladies are having lunch on Wednesday. It's primo, so let me know, if you're coming. But I will send out a reminder to everyone so that you know where we went to do this or
Couple of announcements. Winter Yard has organized a tour of Temple Bethel, the old building up the hill here, on Thursday, June 18th, 10:30 till about noon. This building is 100 years old. We don't know what happened to it, but it's a tour that he is going to lead, so you'll see all the stuff inside, which I guess is supposed to be quite fantastic. So, repeat it, Thursday, June 18th at 10:30. And so we've got time to get this together, but he would like to know approximately how many people are want to come. He did say that it's going to include some walking and climbing stairs, whatever. So they're great speakers. But it should be an interesting tour. The other thing is, to my great frustration, we walked in this morning and the heat was excellent. So we turned on these splits just a few minutes ago. If you start getting too hot, you might be able to turn them down a little bit, but right now they are heating. If you're in heat or cool, the best thing is let them mellow out. So they're kind of just heating. Body. So let me know if you're too hot. I've got a remote right here. I didn't even know we had it here. It's right up there. So anyway,
Any other announcements?
Good. I'm glad that you remembered the lunch announcement, because I know for Unitarian Universalists, food is absolutely essential. What? Well, of course, several people are going to remind you that there's food. Great. So tomorrow we can again start to wear white clothing. Shorts, slacks, blazers, pants, skirts. And we can start doing that and not be in violation of the fashion code perpetrated by who knows who says that you cannot wear white before Memorial Day. So I was going to wear my white pants, but it's too cold, so I decided to wear my dark pants today. So Memorial Day is a complex and confusing national holiday. Is it to be a somber day or a celebratory day? On the one hand, This day was established to respect the men and women who died in our wars. On the other hand, we hold festive parades, have fun-filled picnics, go to fireworks displays, and go shopping to get those huge percentage savings for mattresses, cars, sandals, summer wear, underwear, earbuds, and astrology candles. So Memorial Day came out of the Civil War and a desire to honor the dead of both sides in the conflict. On May 1, 1865, thousands of free slaves gathered at the Charleston, South Carolina horse race park. And they had a service there for all of the men who died, actually on both sides of the war. The racetrack, the reason they selected the racetrack is because it had been a POW facility for the Union soldiers. The accounts say that there were thousands of men and women marching, carrying baskets of flowers that they took to the graves. So over the years, this day has become a day to give tribute to all of our military personnel who died in our 100 plus, I found that interesting as I was doing the research, 100 plus conflicts and wars since the Civil War, including battles with Native Americans. A little while ago, I came across an article that listed 4 aspects of Memorial Day that I would like us to consider as we prepare to observe this year's Memorial Day. The first aspect, which is probably the most obvious and talked about, is patriotism. But I wish to actually narrow the thought about patriotism. While it is right and honorable to memorialize all the women and men who have died fighting in the conflicts and wars, we need to be conscious of the fact that while some of those conflicts needed to be fought to legitimately protect our land and our people and our way of lives, there have been conflicts in which women and men have died for less noble purposes, extending our country's power, land domination, ideology, economic interests, to boost personal power. So to blatantly suppress people who we feel are inferior to us. So we need to remember that while honoring the dead, the glorification of war should not be considered the same thing. So shall we be thoughtful in our patriotism, proud of what our country does, but not allow ourselves to be pulled into hyper-nationalism where we are told we should be proud of the country no matter what it does. Another aspect of Memorial Day is humility. Yes, while Americans died in armed conflicts, those conflicts caused men and women on the other side of the line who were also showing their allegiance, their patriotism to their country to die. So the founders of what was called Decoration Day, showed when they honored both the Union and the Confederate soldiers in the first celebrations, Memorial Day should give us pause to remember that wars take away women and men from all sides of the conflict. And we should temper our celebration of these victories. The third aspect of Memorial Day is the virtue of honor. Now, honor and being honorable is a word we hear very often today. It's sort of old-fashioned sounding. Unfortunately, we live in a world in which aggressiveness is valued, where crass behavior is accepted, even by government leaders, where openly displaying bigotry and prejudice is accepted, and in some quarters, actually admired. But when we think about people who died in our conflicts and wars, we should remember that the individuals, whether they were enlisted or were drafted into the military, did the honorable thing and showed up when they were supposed to, where they were supposed to. And the final aspect of Memorial Day is spirituality. The death of over 1 million men and women defended this country and its values give this day a spiritual quality. Because if spirituality means anything, it means connecting with that which is greater than oneself. And obviously the people who sacrificed their lives in defending this country believed that there was something more than just themselves. So to really honor those who gave their lives for our country, I believe that we too must now work to protect the ideals that they sacrificed themselves to defend. Liberty and justice for all. Emphasis on the words for all. So pledging to do that in our personal lives in whatever ways we can is a way to give meaning to each of us for Memorial Day. I invite us now to join into another hymn, number 159. This is my song. You probably know the melody. I don't know. I understand you all have sung this before, but the melody is very familiar.
This is my home, the country where God is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But our hearts in other lands are beating, with hopes and dreams as true and fond as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and some like bees are overblue and high. Other lands have sunlight to clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, the heart of all nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine.
So I've selected two readings for today. The first is titled, Why Christian Nationalism and Why Now? By Darrell Hart. It was written just earlier this year. The first iteration of Christian nationalism may have come from Francis Schaeffer, an American evangelical theologian and Presbyterian minister, who is seen as the intellectual behind the new Christian right, now called nationalism. Embedded in Schaeffer's outlook was the idea that America had a Christian founding and depended on ideas and institutions from Protestant Reformation. The likeliest explanation for the origins of modern Christian nationalism was the cultural chaos that started in early part of this century. Whatever the explanation, Christian nationalism has added to the mix of influencers who gain followers by disrupting perceived norms. Ironically, by riling the primarily young men who quickly attribute the worst motives to other points of views, Christian nationalism discourages the peaceful and quiet life that the Apostle Paul recommended to early Christians when their society was ruled not by Protestants, but by pagans. And the second reading is entitled Inside the Dangerous Rise of Religious Nationalism. This was actually this is an excerpt from that reading, or that article. It's a very long article, and actually a very good article, by Catherine Stewart. Christian nationalism succeeds by cultivating and exploiting a mindset with four key features: the belief of a particular authentic and superior identity group within America, the conviction that the members of this group are the most persecuted group in society, the apocalyptic fear that the nation is on the verge of collapse, and an affinity for strongman leadership. Rather than merely advocating for conservative positions on social issues like abortion, Christian nationalist activists use these topics as tools to advance an anti-democratic agenda and advance religious and political elite ideas. The main idea of Christian nationalism is that the United States is defined neither by its commitment to equality nor any constitutional principle, but rather by its particular national, cultural, and religious heritage. That this heritage is now under existential threat from progressivism, wokeism, secularism, immigration, and other supposedly anti-American forces. And that the only solution is to turn all power over to an authoritarian leader who is above the law and can defend real Americans against this eternal enemy. So ends our readings for today. So this is the time, and I know you have baskets here. Okay, right. What's that? Oh, you come up. Okay, right. So come up and put your money. It's very important for the support of this beautiful little church. The morning offering will gratefully be accepted. So Memorial Day is Also, it was for me sort of a little bit of a special or emotional day, as you see. I'm a veteran. I served a long time ago. It was just after they phased out the horses. And but I'm a Vietnam era veteran, and I was fortunate, I guess, to say that my military assignments were other places than in Vietnam. But I also understand that with us today we have another veteran, Dale. Dale, it's wonderful having you. Wonderful having you here. Okay. What? Oh, online. Hi. It's great having you here. So I don't know if you know it, but we in this room are the root of all the social and economic problems of this country. We use, along with the Jews, the Muslims, the Buddhists, the Hindus, the atheists, the nuns, liberal Presbyterians, liberal Lutherans, liberal Congregationalists, the American Baptists, and the Quakers, and any other non-evangelical, tolerant, non-homophobic, non-xenophobic, women-supporting religious and political groups are the people that have caused and continue to cause all the social problems of this country. Congratulations. Congratulations, and I'm proud to be in that group. So Christian nationalists are fighting all those terrible cultural and social and political ideas like civil rights and women's rights and secular-based laws and secular truth-seeking education in schools, children's vaccinations, LGBTQA conduct, environmental protection, labor rights, and all those other woke ideas that the progressives and non-conservative political and theological groups have foisted on this country over the last couple of generations. Oh, and as a sidebar, they also want to obtain unfettered power and control over the country's laws and financial structures for the benefit of white people, meaning wealthy white people. Now, sure, you can say the Christian nationalist movement contradicts the principles and norms of democracy, religious freedom, and civil rights established in the US Constitution. But who cares about all of that when it preserves white, heterosexual, white male power to the glory of God and is working to protect the historically Christian nation through the God-chosen leader currently at the head of the national government? Now, I hope that you all caught my tongue-in-cheek assertions, because I said that all in jest. Actually, this political ideology, and I say political ideology and not religious or theological concept, may be the most dangerous threat to our democracy and to our country, most dangerous threat in generations. If I believed that there was a Satan, and that Satan existed and was actually working to destroy this country, I would say that Christian nationalism is the work of the devil. Now, there is no clean and tidy definition of Christian nationalism, since it's not a formal religious denomination or sect or party with a stated doctrine and belief. Nor is there any single person or governing council that leads the Christian nationalist movement. So, for a working definition of Christian nationalism, let's say that it is a racially coded ideology that sacralizes a mystic Christian national background, a Christian American past. It is a worldview where a version of Protestant theology is merged with state power and national identity, using theological and religious terminology to present and promote ultra-conservative political ideas, strongly tinged with ultra-conservative religious and racist doctrine. This political ideology encodes whiteness into true citizenship and functions as a story, actually more correctly as a fairy tale that allows white America to deny racism while also claiming victimhood. Now, almost all countries around the world have their version of religious nationalism that mixes religious beliefs with ultra-conservative politics. Some of them, like in Pakistan or Sri Lanka, come out of their immediate past or their complete religious identity with one form of religion. But all countries, Poland, Hungary, Venezuela, Peru, all have their version of religious nationalism. In the United States, it can be described as a political ideology that asserts the colonies and subsequently the United States was founded as a Christian entity, and therefore the government should take active and vigorous steps to keep the country's Christian roots and identity intact. Since the separation of church and state is not a formal law, it need not be followed. And even if it was a law, it should be ignored as it is not written into the fundamental ideas of Christianity. And God's plan is for the U.S. to be a successful nation based on Christian ideals. And since the United States is under God's special protection, it is an exceptional country and therefore is the primary nation of the world and needs to be followed and listened to absolutely. In other words, adherents to this political ideology believe that the idea that since America was founded by Christians, as they claim, it is now our mission today to spread their version of Christianity and face down the unholy, unchristian ideals enumerated by non-whites, non-conservative European Protestants, or Native people. Christian nationalism distorts the idea of God and ignores all the teachings of the Gospels about welcoming the stranger, helping the poor and children, and not seeking power for one's own benefit. This xenophobic, hateful, radicalized ideology is not a new idea in the United States. In the United States, it can be traced back to the 1600s with the Puritans and Pilgrims who founded a conservative theocracy. Laws were established to enforce that theology, and not living according to the rules of their theocracy led to punishment and possible banishment. Think of Roger Williams and Anne Hutchinson. Ah, for the good old days, probably thoughts of many contemporary Christian nationalists. The good old days when there were laws that required you to follow certain Christian ideas. Now, this phenomenon bubbles up periodically during periods when white conservative Christians, often poorly educated and economically disadvantaged, feel threatened by social forces such as heightened immigration, tight employment opportunities, and general economic instability, expanded civil rights for people of color, sexual minorities. They give racial, ethnic, and cultural minorities expanded opportunities. This is frightening for people who tend to be poorly educated and economically disadvantaged. So that is why there is such anti-DEI, anti-women, anti-LGBTQ, anti-intellectual push now in the halls of national and state governments, since there is a large number of Christian nationalist advocates in positions of governance, and in some Protestant and a few Catholic churches. While Christian nationalists take advantage of pre-existing social problems, they tend to twist those problems, such as racial tension and unemployment and poverty, housing affordability, and historic prejudices and hatreds, into people's anxieties, taking those anxieties and twist them into fear and resentment, which sets the stage for people to follow Christian nationalist programs and policies that somehow promise to take care of all of those horrible progressive things that have happened to this country. So now we can ask, how widespread is this political ideology? Now, this ideology is not popular with the majority of the country's population, but that does not mean that it is not a powerful force. Public Relations Research Institute, which is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that conducts independent research pertaining to the intersection of religion, culture, and public policy, did a nationwide survey, a very thorough survey in 2024. Things haven't changed much since then. Their research reported that 3 in 10 Americans qualify as Christian nationalists. White evangelical Protestants and Hispanic Protestants are most likely to hold Christian nationalist beliefs. A majority of Republicans qualify as either Christian nationalist adherents or sympathizers, compared to 1/4 of independents and less than 1 in 5 Democrats. The survey also reported that 2/3 of Americans who most trust far-right news sources are often Christian nationalist adherents or sympathizers. 3 in 10 Christian nationalist adherents and 1/4 of the sympathizers agree with the sentiment that because things have gotten so far off track, true American patriots have to resort to violence to save this country. A majority of Christian nationalist adherents and sympathizers believe that, quote, immigrants are invading our country and replacing our culture and ethnic background, and that deporting undocumented immigrants to foreign prisons without due process is appropriate to save this country. Closer to home, the survey in 2024 projected that in Massachusetts, 18% of the population support Christian nationalism. And in the state I live in, Rhode Island, 28% of adults support the Christian nationalist ideas. I'm positive of that because the diner that I like to go to is one where I can hear. It's primarily from southern Rhode Island. So they drive their tractors and trucks in. Republicans, as I said, are more than twice as likely as independents and 3 times as likely as Democrats to hold Christian nationalist views. Studies have shown supporters of Christian nationalist ideology tend to be emotionally angry people. They exhibit a higher degree of anger, depression, anxiety, and emotional distress. It has been theorized that this is because Christian nationalists fear God's wrath and punishment for not bringing the country to God. Now, while Christian nationalists argue long and hard that we were founded as a Christian nation and therefore should be declared officially a Christian nation, it is interesting to note that the country's founders obviously did not hold that opinion. If they had believed that we were to be a Christian nation, they would have wanted to put that identity into our founding documents. And it just isn't there. There's no mention of Christianity in the Constitution. And religion in general is mentioned only 3 times: to prohibit attempts to establish a national religion, to prohibit infringement upon the free exercise of religion, and to prohibit a religious test for people holding public office. So it's clear that this country was not founded as an official Christian state. Those who preach a Christian nationalist message are presenting a false gospel. That's the title. That's where the title of this sermon comes from. And I, for one, label it a malicious and downright evil message. Now, some people, I guess, while trying to be polite, because we're supposed to be polite, label Christian nationalism just as religious right. However, Catherine Stewart, a researcher and author about the Christian right and Christian nationalism, says that it is not accurate to use the term religious right to name this ideology. Religious right suggests that it is just a conservative religious movement. But it isn't a religious movement at all. It is a radical political movement whose adherents do not practice what Jesus taught about loving and honoring people, welcoming the stranger, not employing coercion or trying to seize the levels of power. So one final point for us to keep in mind is that Christian nationalism has significant overlap with American militia movement and the Seven Mountains Dominion movement, which is an ultra-conservative ideology within evangelical Christianity that preaches there are 7 aspects of society: family life, religious education, media, the arts and entertainment, business and government, that need to be controlled, emphasize the word controlled, by fundamentalist believing Christians in order for this country to be right in the sight of God. This is an existential threat to the principles of our country, because Christian nationalists not only discount people of color, women, LGBTQ individuals, followers of non-Christian faith traditions, and non-evangelical Christians, they are actively working to eliminate all those who do not subscribe to the Christian nationalist gospel, the false gospel. So tomorrow we honor the men and women who gave their lives defending this country and its Constitution that protects, at least in ideal, all people. To really honor our fallen brothers and sisters, we must do all that is in our legal power to stifle Christian nationalism that is trying to destroy our way of life. So I encourage all of us to become more familiar with Christian nationalism and to work with organizations who are opposing the Christian nationalist efforts to destroy our country. Obviously, you can tell where I come down on this question. For me, there's no ambiguity. Christian nationalism is evil. May we be among those who fight to preserve our way of life as a free, religious independence, justice-seeking country. So be it. Amen. This is a time in the service where we may, let's see, you have the mic there, Mike, to share our personal joys and sorrows.
just wanted to mention to everyone that my beautiful father was served in World War II and was actually shot down and survived. And my beautiful brother served during the Vietnam conflict. I don't believe we call it a war, actually, but a war. Hello, to the men and all sorts of people, but both of them. In fact, my brother, who was a very special guy, he had a learning disability, and at one point in his life, had become an alcoholic. And when I went to one of his anniversaries, he said, "Well, I've got 3 things, and graduated high school, I served my country, and I got this."
I just want to mention my dad too, who served in the Merchant Marine during World War II, and actually the Merchant Marines saw quite a bit of action, so just want to remember.
I just want to say thank you to the few people here. I got stranded in the West Coast. And I lost my phone. And I was in the cabin, and I was at the doctor's office, and they were so kind. They found me 3 friends who were taking care of me. Susan, number 1, Steve, and Tracy, who's not here today. I was able to make it to an appointment at the hospital and get myself home safely. And I've only been coming here a year and a half, and I have family. And I just
I'll just say happy birthday, what birthday to my middle grade.
Oh,
yeah. 4. Big 4. Yeah.
Not a veteran, but a dear woman, leader in our community, wife of former city council colleague of mine, and former acting mayor, Ian Logan's wife, Jean, passed on Tuesday. I think there are services coming up this week, She was in her 90s, delightful woman. I think a week or so I saw her. She had just gotten her hair done, and I wanted to go out for a cocktail. So she had a good run, and rightfully lived to the end. Although she was living in the nursing home, she still was shocked and delightful. And I'll ask you all to remember Jean, David, Logan.
My father also served in World War II. He was a medic. And he didn't get killed. He got so traumatized that I do remember him having night terrors that frightened me so much when I was a child. I remember hearing this banging, and I was probably about 8 years old. And I went to see what was going on in the other room. And my mother sent me off to bed and thought that he was having a seizure. But I didn't realize it until they were night terrors. But last most of his life.
I don't have really people that get close to the war, except for one that I never met. His name is Rudy Santos. And I did find how I learned about him was my grandmother used to watch me. My parents would. And I went through the drawers. Kids do this. And I found the old mother was. She was in a folded flag. And I found that the movie. And this is how I found out that he was in the service. He was perished in the service. And that was the movie. And I just want to say proudly, I didn't bring red on.
Was that 2 greats?
I have 2 grades.
Okay, cool.
I just want to say, my grandfather fought in World War II. He was captured in the Battle of Bull. He was Polish, and fighting against the Nazis. And he was put in a camp called Stalag 11B. I found out about this years after, like a decade after he passed away. Through Ancestry.com, he was service records and stuff. And when I was a little kid, the Nazis to me were like the epitome of evil, and I was afraid of them and Hitler. I used to ask my grandfather about them, and I asked him, were they really scary? And he was like, they weren't that bad. Well, it turns out the camp he was in, a bunch of soldiers got drunk one day, and they were taking about 14 U.S. soldiers out on a work party, and they shot them. And well, it just kind of reminded me of what you talked about the Christian nationalism, Trumpism that's affecting our country right now. I always say it reminds me of Nazis who get hit in the head with a tack hammer. So, it's just, I just want to share that.
So I'm reading something nobody in this room has probably read, the word transcripts of the number of tribes. And it's evil. It's just evil with a bland face. I can't describe it. It's traumatizing for me to read this, but somehow I'm driven to know what depths these people went to and what it looked like on the surface. So, yeah, I just have to say there is evil in this world, and I believe it's in this.
I have one of my daughter who was Army National Guard, did 8 years. God bless her, she made it back and she's doing very well. And the other thing I found out recently too was my mom's father was a sheet metal riveter at the Quincy shipyard. And I found out he worked on the USS Massachusetts. And here I am in Fall River, not knowing, and then I find out, to be in that spot. And when I go down there a lot, I look around and I read some of the things, and it's amazing what those guys have gone through to build such a ship in bad conditions during that time of the war, where I could remember as probably 5, 6, young, and we used to go to his house and he'd tell us all these little stories about the ships and the wars and how they're built and this and the engine, and tell us about the diesel. And as kids, we didn't know, but he was telling us the story. And then one day he invited us all over and he said, today's my last day here where I live. I shall move on to another place, a better place. And we as kids didn't know until a week later he passed away from natural causes. But to hear that he was working at the Quincy shipyard way back in the Navy Yards and working down there 12, 18, 20 hours a day, he goes, numerous people have died working constant, hours just to try to keep building ships to continue the war and so on and so on. And it was amazing to hear the stories and then to see it in writing on the wall with the listing of the USS Massachusetts and stuff like that. It was amazing. Good bit of history for Memorial Day and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I just want to say also a quick word to do with the honor of my campus objectors to the doors and the people who found the nerve, even though it's unpopular, to not vote for.
Well, thank you everyone for sharing. Sometimes it sounds like some very, very personal feelings. So again, thank you. Shall we join now in the spirit of prayer and a moment of silent reflection? spirit of life, as we gather this Memorial Day weekend, we remember all those who lost their lives in war, members of the armed forces, civilians in the service, and innocent bystanders of all ages living on the sidelines who were caught in the bombing bullets or flames. On this weekend, where we honor those who fought and died for the ideals of this country, we also express our concern that forces are at work to corrupt and twist those ideals. There are those who would use our legitimate institutions to keep the poor and marginalized people disempowered, silent, fearful, and struggling. We know that the fight against tyranny, oppression, fascism, hate, xenophobia, and cultural division is not a new fight, but a struggle that goes way back to the very beginning of this nation. We also know that when we live into our highest ideals and fight the powers trying to destroy our noble ideals, these same institutions can be tools to affirm the inherent worth and dignity of all people. O Spirit of life and love, may we have the wisdom and tenacity of our ancestors and their courage and honor of the men and women who fought to protect our country, to continue to build toward the promise that we can read in the founding documents of our nation that proclaim all of us are created as equal and are endowed with the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Shall we now sit in silence with our own thoughts and prayers for a couple of moments? For all of our thoughts and prayers spoken and held in the silence of our hearts, we join together and say, Amen. So our closing hymn is number 149, Lift Every Voice and Sing. It happens to be one of my favorite, but we're only going to do verse 1, number 149, Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Let it resound, not as the rolling seas. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has harmed us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun our day begun, let us march on till victory is won.
Remember the sacrifices made by men and women through the generations for our country. and remember the true values upon which this country was founded, and hold dear our ideal of justice for all. May we now go from this place with hope that the aspirations of our minds and hearts for peace and justice be attained through the deeds of our hands. A blessing on us all. Amen.